to be sharing with you in this video how to stop needing validation and approval from the outside world and live actually for yourself. Because the truth is that so many people, they're not actually even living their own life. They're living a life that they think that they want, but in reality, they're living for somebody else. They're actually living somebody else's vision. And so I think it's quite a shame to walk through life and not even to be living into your own vision and what you actually want, and then to live into somebody else's vision. Now, whether this happens consciously, hopefully not consciously, but whether unconsciously or unconsciously, the truth is that it's really, really a huge shame to not live into your own vision. Because I think that if we really, really believe that we had a conscious choice, we wouldn't make that choice. Because we can understand that we can live into our own vision and help other people live into their vision, but it doesn't need to be like where your vision and your goals and your values need to be sacrificed. I don't believe in that. And in this video, I'm going to be sharing with you how to not sacrifice your vision, not sacrifice your goals, stop needing the outside approval from others, but still get it and still get what you want, or have the highest probable chance, give yourself the highest probability that you're going to get it. Put yourself in a position where you can get it and be prepared to actually receive it. And so that you don't need that approval, but still move towards that thing in your life as much as possible. And so the first thing that I want to share with you in this video in terms of how to actually do this is to remember that truthfully, I'm not saying that money is not going to improve your life. I'm not saying that things are not useful. But what I want to share with you is that at the very essence, nothing, externally will ever satisfy you. Nothing in the outside world is going to truly satisfy you in your life. Now, I'm not saying that money isn't a powerful tool that can absolutely change your life. It can change your life completely. I think that it's important to have your money issues fixed in your life. Fix your money problems, fix all your relationship problems, fix all your materialistic problems, make sure your health is good, make sure everything in the material and the physical world is as good as possible. Of course, I would highly invite and encourage every single person to really prioritize making sure that their physical needs and that their desires are met in the physical realm. But I think it's important that as you do this, to have an awareness and a deep knowing in your heart, and just to be aware as you're doing all of this that nothing is going to satisfy you. No matter how good your health gets, one day it is going to deteriorate and it's going to be something else. You come into this world and you have nothing when you start. And when you leave, you're going to also leave with nothing. And I didn't come up with that quote, but I think it's true. You can walk through life and you can make $1 million, you can not make $1 million. The physical world in the form of appearances will never satisfy you. You can be aware of all these appearances changing, and they're going to change, right? Forms in your life will change on a consistent basis. Forms and external things will always change. And so because they change, how can we attach to something? Anything you attach to is ultimately going to change in the world of form, because it's always changing. Nothing stays solid in the world of form. It might seem solid, but it's going to change. So the moment that you cling on to it, you're going to lose that peace. So peace comes from not attaching to any form in the world. It's the law of non-attachment, right? Don't be attached to the external world. And I think that that's what is necessary to not need that validation or approval. If you want validation from a person or from a job opportunity or from a certain thing, if you want to put yourself in the highest probability to even get these things in your life, I think it's important to come from the essence that they cannot complete you. And of course, to some degree, it's like, well, Francis, don't we need people to be happy? Aren't we social creatures? Aren't we literally dependent on each other? I would say absolutely yes. I think that we're social creatures and that we can't ever do things alone. If you've ever thought that, I'm doing this thing alone in my life, that never actually happened. You've never done anything alone in your life, because the truth is that, every single thing that we go through in our life happens with somebody, truthfully. And even if you're doing it alone, the way you're able to have a space to do it alone is in a house that was built with humans that took manpower of multiple humans to build that, right? So when we come from this space of remembering that, everything in life, all the luxuries that you can even be alone in the first place, come from humans coming together and not being alone at all. So from that, I know that sounds weird to say it like that, but from this space, yes, we can honor the fact that we literally need each other. You know, we literally are social species that quite on the most physical and tangible level, we cannot do everything in any way alone at all. Like, that's a complete myth. Doing things alone never happened, because the human existence, we rely on each other to be successful, to thrive, right? To build a house takes multiple people, it takes a whole team to do that. You can technically build it alone, but it's going to be a lot harder, and some things you literally cannot do alone. You know, even to be born, you had to come out of another person's body, which was your mother. And that didn't happen alone. That happened with multiple people. So if you want to have this idea that, oh, I'm going to be alone in my life, well, how did you even come to be? You came out of your mother. And that sounds funny to say it like that, but when you say it like this, it just keep in mind, you know, the humbleness of life. I say it might seem like I'm bringing up multiple topics from multiple different areas and kind of going all over the place, and to a degree I possibly am, but at the same time, you know, I would say that all I'm pointing to here, and the point of what I'm trying to say, is that we can't forget the humbleness and, you know, the essence of life, which is that, you know, you came from nothing, you're going to return to nothing, nothing will satisfy you, no physical assets will ever satisfy you at the very core. Essentially speaking, none of it is going to make you happy. None of it is going to fulfill you. So from that space, I think it's a much more, you know, it's a much better place to explore the world from that place. From that place of non-attachment, you can now really enjoy the materialistic items in life without attaching to them. And again, probably have put yourself in a higher probability, not guaranteed, to create more of them. It's not necessarily guaranteed, but I think that if you come from this space, it's a lot easier to do things like make money or to build powerful relationships if you're not attached to them. You know, it's a lot easier to do it. And so the second thing that I want to share with you in this video is that I think that another way to stop needing validation and approval from the outside world and live for yourself is to have a deep-rooted self-acceptance. You know, that's really what it means to become more conscious, is to deeply, very deeply accept the present moment as it is completely. You know, because there's going to be many times in your life where you cannot control so many things. You know, so many things are out of your control. You can't control so many things, right? You can't control so many different factors in life that I don't even need to list in this moment because there's just too many. And from this space, I think that, you know, if you really want to take the utmost, highest level of control in your life, the highest probability of creating your goal, being committed, taking the most power, feeling the most empowered, creating the most level of you feel like you're in control in your life. You know, ironically, I think that the way to get to this space is when you're rooted in a deep self-acceptance and non-control whatsoever. You know, from a space of, I don't have anything to control, I completely surrender to all the factors in my life that I cannot control. You know, even the things that you can control, you surrender to the fact that maybe you can't control it in the way that you think that you can. You know, it's a kind of like a paradox. I think that if we come from that space of deep self-acceptance, that's the space in which we can take massive action and really take control of our life. Because if you're only going to be on the spectrum of only controlling things, you're not really going to even have too much control at that point, because it's just going to become like too much. It's too much control to the point where, are you really even in control? And well, what do I mean when I say that? Well, I think that if we test it for ourselves, you can notice this. You can notice in your life when, if you control things way too much, you're not going to have any power or control over that situation. Try it for yourself. Try to overly control something and overly attach to something and see, is it going to get you the result? Usually not. It's usually when you want something, but you're able to let it go and have a perfect balance of wanting it and accepting that you might not get it, and then it may not happen, is what helps you to get it, right? Because if you don't want it at all, and you're like, oh, I'm just going to accept the present moment and I don't want to have any goals, that's not really going to work when it comes to being a holistic person, you know, where your heart and your mind are both balanced. But if you're just going to be the type of person where it's like, you know, it doesn't matter how you feel, only take action, forget the present moment, and just, you know, goals. It's like, that's not going to be a place to feel fulfilled either in your life. So how do we really balance this? Well, if you want to take action in your life, if you want to have better goals, if you want to have more alignment with your goals, deep self-acceptance, I think, is going to be the space in which that can really happen. I think that it's going to be tough to create what you really want if you can't come from a space of deep, deep self-acceptance, if you can't accept the present moment as it is, if you can accept the fact that some things are going to happen in your life that you cannot control, if you're not going to be able to accept the fact that challenges are going to happen, you're going to have problems that you didn't expect, if you can't accept that things are going to get uncomfortable sometimes, you're not going to be able to take any control in your life, because all these things that you can't control, you're going to have an expectation that you have to control them, when the reality is that you just simply cannot. And that's not going to give you the space and the capacity to control the things that you can control. Because if you're so hung up on all these things that you cannot control, where are you going to find the energy to control the things that you can? You're not going to have the energy, because your attention goes where energy flows where attention goes. So if all your energy is focused on all things you can't control, you're not focused on anything that you can control. Because you're focused on everything that you don't want in your life. And surprise, surprise, what do you get more of in your life when you focus on what you don't want and what you can't control? And if you focus on all the areas in your life where you feel powerless, you can't control your life, you can't do what you want, and you feel like you're a victim, what are you going to get more of in your life? What's going to happen? What's going to be the result of that? What's going to happen is that you're going to feel powerless. But if you take that situation and you accept it completely, and you say, right now, I can't control any of this. There's nothing that I'm in control of. It's not up to me. Give it all back to the Creator. Give it back to the Creator itself. You can't do any of it. Don't leave it up to your ego. Give it back to God completely, if you want to use that word. Give it back to, the oneness of life itself. Give it all back. You can't control anything. None of it is up to you whatsoever. From that space, what can you focus on that's going to make you feel better? What can you focus on that's going to improve your life? What can you focus on that's going to help you get a little bit closer to that goal? You can't control if it's going to happen. You don't know. You truly don't know. Live in that space of the unknown. You have no idea. There's nothing guaranteed in life. You don't even know if you're going to live tomorrow. Yeah, it sounds scary to say like that. I'm sorry to say it. But from that space of humbleness, maybe now you can start to focus a little bit more on what you want. But then that's the energy that I think is necessary to start to take action, to move closer towards the goal. Because from that space of not being attached, now you can build a little bit more momentum towards what you want. Whereas you felt so powerless before, I can't control anything, victim, why is it me, I don't know why this is happening, just focus on yourself, me, I can't do it, right? Take a step back, right? Accept the situation. What can you do? What is within your control? Take small steps. Small steps become big steps over time. The smallest step becomes the biggest step when you do that step every single day over a long period of time. Deep self-acceptance will bring you to massive control in your life, in my personal opinion. Now, the third thing that I want to share with you in this video, to conclude this video, is just to remember that I think that if you want to not need validation and approval from the outside world, one thing that you're going to have to do, and if you want to live for yourself, one of the things that you're going to have to do, is to just learn to generate your state from within yourself. Because, it's really going to be we can't keep going through life and expecting other things and people and situations to create a state of peacefulness within ourselves, to create a state of peace and happiness within ourselves. That's not going to cut it anymore. Because people are going to feel that, it's not going to be sustainable for you. And not to mention that, you're not going to feel happy doing it. You're not going to feel happy. That's the most important thing. How is it going to be a recipe for success in your life? And by success, what I mean is true peace within, in this particular case. How are you going to be able to get that if you're trying to feel better by controlling things out there? That's not going to work. If you want to really stop needing validation and approval from the outside world, what we have to do is to learn to generate our state from within ourselves, to be peaceful from within ourselves, not based on how much money you make, or the external world, or the relationship that you're in, or whatever, or the state of your health. All these things are going to change. And everything is, how much money you have is going to fluctuate. You might be rich one day and the next day you can lose it all. What's going to not change between those states? Who you truly are and the peace that lies within your heart, right? The peace that is truly you and the background of all of these things. That's where you're never going to lose that. Why not depend your peace on something that never changes, which is your true nature, your consciousness, your ability to be aware of the changing states of life, to be aware of the awareness itself. Why not depend your peace on this? Why not depend your peace on something that has never changed since the moment that you were conscious. Since the moment that you became aware of your life, that you were aware, what has never changed? The consciousness prior to anything at all, which is that you're just aware. You're just aware prior to, the fact that you have a body and then you have a mind and that you have an emotion, that one day you have money and the next day you don't have money, right? And then one day you have, and maybe for a few years you have millions of dollars, and then maybe next year you have no money in your bank account. Maybe one day you have an amazing relationship and then God forbid something happens, or maybe it doesn't work out and then you have no relationship. And I don't like to talk negative. I know it's negative to say it like that, but the truth is that the pleasures that come from the external world can be taken away very quickly. And it's not something to attach to. And I think that there's a deeper rooted piece that we can attach to, not necessarily attach to, wrong word, but root ourselves in, that's going to really make our life peaceful and bring us that true peace in our heart. And I think that, the best way to do this is to remember that learning to generate these states from within ourselves while we live life is going to help you to get closer to that, if that makes sense. So if you really want to stop needing validation, approval from the outside world, and feeling like you need to focus on something out there to be happy, and that you really, really need this particular thing to respond a particular way for you to feel good, right? And you're not going to feel good unless that thing is perfectly how you imagined it in your mind, and it needs to be this way, or it's like, I'm not going to be happy unless it goes like this. If you want to remove all of that, why not think about, drop that whole paradigm. How do I feel happy just by me being in my own space, having nobody, nothing, and just, being happy? And I'm not necessarily talking about even a meditation practice, because meditation practice maybe is still you being in a certain position in meditation, or putting your body in a certain position, or maybe feeling peaceful. I'm not talking about feeling peaceful in a meditation necessarily. I'm talking about learning to accept any situation as it is completely in any state whatsoever. And then that acceptance and that love almost changes that situation completely. Because in order to change a situation, we need to come from a state of completely accepting the situation and seeing it for what it truly is, and come from that space of who you really are. That's the only space to really make change, is to come from that space of you being aligned with your truth and who you actually are. And then you can change your life from that space. Who really are you? You're the consciousness that writes the narrative of your life. That's who you really are. That's the truth of the reality, is that you get to narrate your life and write your world in the way that you want. But even the narration can change. The narrator can change the story, right? Who is the narrator? Maybe that's what brings us peace, is who is that narrator? Who is the one writing the story? Who is the one that's observing and watching the movie play out? Who is that? What is that? That is going to be where you're going to need to focus on, in my personal opinion, then to start to learn to generate your state from within, because only from that space are you going to be able to change your state. Ironically, to change your state, you need to come from a state of not wanting to change your state at all. Yeah, that sounds paradoxical, but if you want to change your state, you need to transmute that energy. And transmutation is not about resistance of any kind. Like, you're not going to change anything at all if you resist it. If you want to change something, to turn it into something better, you better stop resisting it and accept it as it is first. And that sounds paradoxical and maybe a little bit cliche, but I think that's the reality of the world, is that if we want to change something, we have to accept it first. Don't accept it so much that you're not going to change it, but accept it as it is, and now use that anger or resistance, or that awareness of the resistance, to change it into something better. Because when you're aware of the resistance, you can accept the resistance. You can't accept something, that you're not even aware. If you're attached to it, that's what creates all that resistance on top of the resistance on top of the resistance, right? But if you detach from it, now it's just resistance. You're not resisting resistance anymore. It's just a feeling of resistance. From that space of awareness, seeing resistance, seeing that you're upset about something, that you're angry about something, you can accept it though, and now make a change from that space. From that space of acceptance and accepting resistance and not resisting resistance and accepting the situation as it is, now you're able to make changes in your life that are going to help you to not need that validation, not need that approval from the outside world, and live for yourself, not need anything from the outside world or from out there. Live for who you want to be, and then as a result get closer to what you actually want to create in your life.